Every fan of story-driven games fears two things: that there will be no payoff for the character development at the end of the game, and that the writing will get lazy over time. But lazy writing is usually not a conscious decision. I mean, why would it be? It mostly happens because the developer runs out of time or money. So sometimes they have to rush the story, and sometimes they have to rush the game. Either way, the dead giveaway that something went wrong is when the main characters act out of character. It feels as if the protagonist is not being himself. We have all seen this before, either in recent stories or in old classics. Since League of Legends is technically not a story-driven game, it is honestly not a phenomenon to find champions not being themselves in-game. But that's not because Riot would be lazy or bad at writing. It's simply because even though they are really good at crafting their world now, it is difficult to keep all the voice lines up to date with the current story. As a result, we've got a couple of champions in the game who kept their old personas, while being someone totally different in the story. And that's what I want to focus on today. I want to show you some of the biggest differences in characters you can find in League of Legends. Now, before we get right into it, let me show you some examples of champions that might be older, but they are still fine. To the surprise of many, there are a lot of old champions with entirely different lore, whose new stories stay true to the original character. Brand is a brilliant example. If you listen to Brand's original quotes that are still present in the game,
ready to set the world on fire.
You may think that he's a crazy pyromancer maniac, and that's exactly what he has become. Brand is the son of a Freljordian shamanistic witch. He was born with the ability to use magic, but he was never taught how to do it. It wasn't until much later in his life that he met Ryze, who not only showed him how to cast spells, but he also taught him about the world runes. And in the Lord of the Rings style, it was those runes that corrupted his mind and turned him into a power-hungry magical abomination. In his old lore, Brand was just an angry fire spirit. So it is amazing how far Riot went with changing his story while preserving Brand's character. And Brand is not the only one who stayed the same. I got a few more examples. Amumu was kept as the weeping little emperor he always was. Hecarim's hatred now comes from his thirst for war. Lee Sin is still on his quest to master his own abilities, although he is not a summoner anymore. Nasus is still lost in depression, although his quotes do make him a bit more insane than he should be. Nautilus surprisingly stayed as a vengeful titan. Renekton is still insane, and there are many more. The most interesting example here would be Varus actually. His quotes could be interpreted as the Darkin speaking.
The guilty will know agony.
But sometimes you might be able to hear the words of Valmar or Kai.
Beware a man with nothing to lose.
His personality is broken in 3, so his melancholic quotes make sense now, proving that Riot can cleverly take champions' quotes into consideration when rewriting the stories. But then we also have some champions that are on the neutral side. These are champions that have quotes that don't tell us anything about their characters. Jax is an awesome example of this. We know Jax probably fought in the war for Icathia, and that he is now looking for warriors to help him reclaim his home from the Voidborn. His quotes don't really support the new story.
Imagine if I had a real weapon.
But they don't deny it either. Other champions, such as Janna or Talon, are in the same place. There is no use debating whether they are true to their characters or not. So instead, let's finally have a look at the meat of this video. The champions who act absolutely out of character in-game when compared to their canon story. A quick note before we start. We'll avoid talking about their joke and dance animations. Some of them were obviously made to break the fourth wall, and sometimes they were even turned into memes. So with that said, let's start with Ahri. Ahri's story is quite a touching one. It's a tragedy where she's struggling to keep her hunger for human essence under control. You see, Ahri is an orphan Vastaya that had to learn how to use her powers on her own, which means that most of her knowledge of magic comes from her instincts. She has the ability to consume the souls of her victims. The twist is that by doing so, she also gains their memories. The first time Ahri consumed a human essence, she felt a euphoric rush. She felt more alive than ever, and she suddenly had the urge to find more dying humans to consume their essences too. That's where Ahri's hunger for human souls comes from. She doesn't necessarily kill people, but should she find a wounded warrior, she would happily take what they have to offer. But that's not to say that Ahri never killed a man before. In fact, that's where the tragedy of her story comes into play. The more human essences Ahri consumed, the more she understood human life, and soon she was able to socialize pretty well. In fact, with time, Ahri even found herself a lover. But as time passed without new prey, Ari's hunger overtook her body. And in the end, even though she never wanted to do it, she killed the only man she truly loved by consuming his soul. Now, this tragedy doesn't really line up with how Ari is depicted in the game. On the Summoner's Rift, Ari is more of a succubus.
I know what they desire.
Her voice lines don't fit her broken mind anymore. In the story, she is literally trying to forget what she had done. But she can't forget about her lover, because he still lives as long as Ari remembers him. I'm pretty sure a character who's mourning her dead lover wouldn't say this.
If you'd like to play with me, you'd better be sure you know the game.
Next up we have to talk about Vladimir. Now Vladimir got his story updated quite recently. It's not a long story, but it goes deeper than you would expect. Basically, the TLDR version is that Vladimir is an ancient prince. His father, the king, traded him as a hostage to the Darkind for the safety of their kingdom. But Vladimir always thought himself better than all the other mortals. And so, over time, he gained the trust of his Darkind master. And he was even allowed to study and use blood magic. That's how Vladimir became the first ever mortal wielder of blood magic. With this godly power, Vladimir was able to sustain himself for hundreds of years. And he became so good at using his hemomancy, he even managed to slay the Darkind Master himself. Right now, Vladimir hides in the Immortal Bastion, and his influence is going in cycles. He always hides in the safety of his shadows until he is forgotten and his body is weak. But once there is an opportunity to change the world, he rejuvenates his body with young blood and he emerges from his hideout. From the Darkind War to Mordekaiser's reign to the Rune Wars, the legends say that every time there was a world-changing event, Vladimir was present. And so, with this deep and rich history, it is surprising to see that his voice lines are nothing but puns.
I'd love a pint.
And I mean it. Literally every single line he has is a blood pun. Every single one.
A vital, delicious red. Something is leaking.
I hope they make sure to turn Vladimir into a noble immortal mage instead of a clown. Next up we have Lux. Now Lux's quotes do line up with her character decently well. Lux is known for her bright attitude, which is on purpose, since she literally wields the light. The only thing we could nitpick is the fact that Lux also has a depressed side of her character. The fact that she has to hold back and hide who she is takes a toll on her bright side. But I'm willing to let that slip, since that side of her character is still being developed. What I do not understand, however, and what absolutely does not fit her character in any way, shape or form, is her laugh. That laugh is the laugh of a maniac. I believe originally it was supposed to represent the unstable side of her. That's why even the animation is just pure insanity. Like when you have a good character that passed into the too good to be good stage. But now, it just doesn't make sense anymore. Next we have Miss Fortune. Sarah Fortune, as some of you may know her, is much more of a badass than many may know about. In fact, the one video that really represents who she is the video where Riot explored her character. She is way manlier than most men in Bilgewater, and you can definitely get those vibes from the comic about her too. So with all of that said, it's funny how this pirate veteran who took down the king of Bilgewater only lets out,
I've got a good feeling about this.
Call me mad, but that's way out of her character. If there is one thing Miss Fortune is not, it is sassy. But sassy is the only thing her voice lines are.
You've got dangerous eyes. I like that.
Then we have Nidalee. Nidalee was a girl that someone decided to leave in the middle of a magical jungle dressed in nothing but rugs. She was an orphan with no memories of her parents, but she was quickly adopted by a family of cougars. Since she lived with her new family in a magical jungle, the magic of that place seemed to slowly affect her body. And sometimes Nidalee would lose control and she would turn into a cougar. Now, the important thing to remember is that Nidalee was raised as a child of nature. She had no contact with civilization until much later in her life. One time when her cougar family was killed by a pack of Kilash, which is Rengar's tribe of Astaya. Nidalee was surprised to learn that she instinctively understood some of the things they said. However, her short story revealed that Nidalee herself can't speak the common tongue that well. She can form sentences well enough to say what she means to say. But honestly, a complicated grammatically correct sentence would be quite an accomplishment. Just like when I'm talking. So quotes like,
I'll show these house cats real claws,
don't really fit who Nidalee is. She's supposed to be much more primitive, and a lot less.
Did I mention it's mating season?
Next there is Orianna. I don't have to explain her entire story here, for obvious reasons as you'll see. Basically, Orianna was a girl that got sick from all the poison fumes in Zone. Especially when there is an accident in Zone, the danger can be very real. Her father was an owner of a shop, and he was skilled at crafting tools and gadgets. And when he learned that Orianna was ill and she couldn't be cured, he slowly replaced parts of her body with mechanical counterparts. But as time passed and the corruption continued, eventually Orianna's entire body had to be replaced. So now, Orianna is technically a robot who is trying to re-experience human feelings. And do you know what a peaceful robot who likes to watch operas in Piltover would say all the time?
Yes, I am a weapon. We will kill your enemies. That will be fun.
Unfortunately, Orianna's quotes did not age that well.
Why are they running?
Next up on the list we have Shabana. Again, Shabana's story is not that complicated. So here is the TLDR version. Shabana's mother was Yiva, a fierce dragon broodmother. Yiva had 2 eggs, but one of them was stolen by a mage. The mage tried to sell the egg in Piltover, but no one would buy it. Sometime later, the egg began to hatch. Now, it was never explained why it happened. We can speculate that the egg was imbued with the mage's essence. But the thing that hatched from the dragon's egg was Shabana. When the mage noticed, the egg hatched what looked like a human baby. He got attached to it. Later in her life, Shabana's adopted father was burned to ashes by Yiva herself, because in Yiva's eyes, Shabana was nothing but abomination. And later, Shabana even saved the life of Prince Jarvan, who helped her kill Yiva in return. But none of this story is really that important, because if you look at Shabana's quotes and how she acts in-game, she is quite a bit more bloodthirsty than she should be.
The enemies of Demacia will fall.
Tremble before the power of a dragon.
That's because in the past, Shabana was accepted into the Demacian military. And back in 2011, nobody cared about mages in Demacia. So Shabana was just accepted into the army as a dragon. But I am pretty sure this
I will dance in their ashes.
is not something a dragon who befriended humans would say. Now let's move on to Lissandra. Lissandra already has a few confusing bits in her story. She is basically an ancient witch whose mind was corrupted by the Watchers from the Void. She was tricked by the Watchers into preparing Freljord for their arrival, in exchange for immortality. However, when the Watchers arrived, Lissandra realized that they weren't these peaceful gods which she thought they were. In fact, the Watchers brought nothing but annihilation. With this revelation, Lissandra decided to sacrifice everything she had, and she froze the majority of their present nation, together with the Watchers, in a massive ice cube in the Holding Abyss. These days, Lissandra is on a quest to hide her past. She doesn't want anyone to know that she is the one who led the Watchers into the world. The one story that contradicts with this is the Legend of Orn. In that story, Lissandra purposefully corrupted the bridge over the Holding Abyss, so that one day it would collapse and the Watchers would be free again. Even though that's not really what Lissandra wants now. This plot hole can be explained by the fact that it is just a legend, and from what we know, it could all be just a made-up story about the bridge. Either way, Lissandra in-game is still this deadly witch that wants the Watchers to return, and that's simply not who she is anymore.
This world has forgotten true power.
The Watchers will return.
Even though she can be quite a bit evil sometimes. From the stories of Nunu and Willem, we know that all she really wants is a calm kingdom in the north. She also might want to murder Ash and Sejuani, because they carry the legacy of Avarosa and Cerilda who know what Lissandra had done. But besides that, she should be quite peaceful. Then we have Viktor. Many of you may know that Viktor is one of my favorite characters. I don't really have to go deep into his story, because his personality is what matters here. Viktor is a man who believes that machines can alter humans in useful ways. For example, if someone is doing heavy lifting, Viktor could enhance their body to make their work easier. And in a similar way, if someone is doing precise work, where a single mistake could take lives, Viktor could implant a chip into their brain to make sure they don't make a vital mistake. The issue is that some people see this process as bad. They see altering brains as taking away humanity, even though all it does is save lives. Unfortunately for Viktor, who wants nothing but to help people, there is a fanatic cult in Zone who sees Viktor as a god. The Glorious Evolution that you may know about is not a movement that Viktor started. In fact, Viktor does not like it, nor does he support the Glorious Evolution. It is the fanatic people who see the Glorious Evolution as a religion, and they even sacrifice their human parts for mechanical counterparts in this faith. So in the end, Viktor is nothing but an awesome guy who is helping people get through their workday easier. That is not what he does in-game.
Destroy, then improve, adapt, or be removed. true power.
For some reason, Viktor still has his old lines that turn him into a mad scientist. And in-game, he acts like one of his fanatic followers, instead of himself. And now the last champion on this list. Since Viktor himself is a really good person, it makes sense that his creation, Blitzcrank, would also have a heart of gold. Originally, Blitzcrank was created to help people in places where it would be dangerous for humans to go. For example, if there was an accident and poisonous gas spilled into the streets of Zone, Blitzcrank would rush in to save as many people as he could.
Quake in fear, fleshling, exterminate, exterminate.
Hey, did you know that we have social media and Twitch where we talk about other League facts and stories? And did you know that we have need mugs and shirts too? The links to all of that will be below. And as always, thank you, come again.